Through you, Mr. Chair. At this point in time, the recommendation is that staff investigate the ability to allow. So staff would be reporting back, and at that time, we could certainly address the liability concern.
Thank you. So transit is a provincial issue, a provincial directive, but it affects all of us. And so we all have a responsibility. And I remember back in whatever that year was, 2004, I don't think it was called Metrolinx at the time, they said they were building us a new parking garage and that we should just wait and all of the problems would go away. And we know that that didn't happen. And the more parking that's built, the more people are going to use it. So it is an issue that needs to be addressed further by council and by the province and by Metrolinx. And I did participate in a meeting. Mr. Clayson was there, some other residents. It is the last mile that is the problem, and that is really getting people to the GO station in alternative ways. And I have spoken to some residents. Some people would be interested in parking at some distance from the station and then having a shuttle bus. But, you know, we have to find some creative ways to do this because this problem is not going to go away. And we are set to receive 8,000 people in our 2C lands. So I'm glad we have some resolution to the issue this evening, but we need to keep working at it.
Okay, if there's no more speakers, I'd like to put this on the floor for a vote. We'll take out clause 2 and vote on that separately, if everyone is okay with that. So we'll put clause 1, 3, and 4 to a vote.
1 and, yeah.
Okay, 3 as amended, so 1, 3 as amended, and clause 4. All those in favor? Opposed? Okay, we'll vote on, that passes. I'll vote on clause 2. All those in favor? Opposed? Okay, that is defeated, clause 2. Okay, that completes item. That concludes item 1. Next item that was pulled was number 2, and that was pulled by Councillor Thompson.
I can't move the recommendation.
Can someone put it on the floor? Mayor Daw, second. Councillor Perry. Do you want a coffee or something? Oh, good, thank you. Okay. Councillor Thompson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Perhaps if I could direct the first question really to the mayor, is one of the challenges that I've had, as well as I've heard from residents, really is, you know, what's the intent of this project? You know, why are we doing it? What is the goal behind it? What do we hope to accomplish? And it's challenging because, you know, I've heard some of it from the mayor, but at the same time, there seems to be a bit of a confusion even among staff. I mean, you know, I attended the open house, and some of the staff there kept referring to it as a means of addressing the traffic issue on Yonge Street. And I don't think that's necessarily Mayor Dawes' intent, but, you know, even as recently as last week in the Aurora, and if you read the article, you know, it was referred to, and Mr. Simonauskas is quoted in there talking about it addressing traffic concerns, and again, you know, it seems to imply that it was proposed to limit traffic on Yonge Street in the downtown core to 1 lane in each direction to allow for more on-street parking, and so I think that that's kind of, as we say, muddying the waters. And so perhaps through you to Ms. Mayor Daw, you know, is he able to provide us with just a little brief synopsis of, you know, why he proposed it and what the goal is that he hopes to accomplish with that?
To provide parking for the people who can't fit into the GO structure. The intent is to create a people-friendly space and to change, that was the intent, to change the streetscape of Yonge in the pilot. And it is a pilot that we're talking about here, a pilot area. Again, I'll go back to, it was FCM, I think, in 2014, so almost 2 years ago, when it really came home to me, and I know that it's been done in a number of other places, is simply to create a different streetscape to allow, by having the parking there, by having not necessarily solid parking from one end to the other, but having a capability for the bump outs that you may have seen in some of the drawings, providing an opportunity for perhaps some of the restaurants in that area to have extended sidewalk space for patio capability. It provides a different streetscape for those businesses in the area, which ideally creates a more welcoming environment for those people to come down. If you look at some of the concepts of people-friendly cities, it's people, transit, bicycles, cars, and the idea is to create an area that is more friendly to people. And certainly, I talked to the CEO at the library, and she walks usually one way from the library down to her home. And she says, I don't like walking on Yonge Street because the traffic is too fast and it's not a comfortable environment. I talked to a number of people who say, well, we can't park in the library. The library parking has always been a challenge. And I say, well, you can park on Yonge Street. Well, I don't feel comfortable parking on Yonge Street because the traffic is simply too fast. So by putting in that dedicated parking as an example in front of the library, it creates a different atmosphere, a different feeling for people to do it. So I think that some of the statements in Mr. Simonoska's report would be a resultant from that type of parking stricture, if you will, or lane stricture, excuse me. So it seems counterintuitive, but it actually does improve traffic flow because people are not diving in and out. Which a number of the merchants that I've spoken with up and down Yonge Street identified as a problem. It brings a little more order to that traffic flow. And quite frankly, if you look at Yonge Street at almost any time of the day, except for the 2 hours southbound in the morning and the 2 hours northbound in the evening, it is one lane because of people parked there. So by providing perhaps a little more structured area, it creates what I think is a much more friendly streetscape in that area, far more people friendly, and part of, I think, what this council overall agrees is a challenge that we're trying to deal with right now, which is to work with those businesses in that area to create a more friendly environment. I hope that answers your question, Councillor Thompson.
Thank you, Mayor Daw. If I may, through you to Mr. Simonoskis. Mr. Simonoskis, has been spoken about on a few occasions when we've discussed this that a similar program has been implemented in many other municipalities. Burlington's been mentioned, Barrie, and there's been others as well. So, I took it upon myself to take a look at the programs that they have in those municipalities, and they've set it up differently. And so I just wanted to ask you a few questions with regards to how we're implementing it versus how the other municipalities implement it. For example, in all of the municipalities I looked at, those businesses that want to take advantage of the sidewalk policy that the cities have, they actually have to submit an application. They have to get a permit, which they pay for, to do so. They also have to enter into a lease agreement. That lease agreement really is for that section of the sidewalk itself. So do we expect those merchants that will be using those bump outs to enter into a lease agreement with the town?
Mr. Simonoskis?
Through you, Mr. Chair, there is a permitting process that we have, and in speaking with staff, the intent for this particular pilot is to have them engage in the permitting process but waive the fees from the perspective of using their engagement as a way to sort of measure the uptake of the program. Again, as Mayor Don mentioned, the intent is to test the feasibility of this proposal and to look at what benefits might come out. So engagement with the businesses, especially the businesses that are in front of the various bump outs, was conducted, and surveys, conversations were done with those businesses to see how engaged they would be. So, so to your question, there is a process, and we want to accommodate these vendors who are interested in participating by streamlining that process.
Sorry, still not clear. Are they going to enter a lease agreement for that space, similar to what is required in the other municipalities?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I don't know if we call it a lease agreement, but we do have a patio policy, so they would have to participate in that policy.
So, and again, the other requirements, if I may, through you, Mr. Chair, those that enter into that lease agreement, they have to take out liability insurance in the matter of $5 million. And this seems to be critical with the other municipalities because they're using the structures, and so they need to carry liability on those structures. So will that be a requirement of the permit process, that those that use the patios have liability insurance?
Mr.
Through you,
Simonauskas?
through you, Mr. Chair, I don't have that information. The policy that we were speaking of is not something that we are overseeing at this point in time. What I would like to do is bring back a memo as part of a further response to the next meeting.
And then I guess my final one really is, you know, some of the suggested uses for those bump outs is a patio for some of the merchants, restaurants to take advantage of. In my preliminary investigation, if they don't have a lease agreement or have that something that says that they have that space, they can't get licensed. So, you know, these are all relevant questions in terms of, you know, how this program is going to be implemented. And, you know, we talk about simple things, about doing the right things, but at the same time, doing things right. And so, you know, I said it back in January, this has been in front of us a year and a half, and these are the questions that I continue to ask in terms of what's the goal, how are we going to do it, how are we going to implement it, you know, what are the details? And it seems to be a challenge to get these details on how the program is actually going to be implemented and run. And I think that, you know, it's crucial. It really is to understand the liability, lease agreements. I mean, we continue to refer to this as, hey, listen, it works great in other municipalities, but they have a significantly different model than what we're proposing. In fact, in all of those other municipalities, it's the vendors that pay for the structures, not the municipality.
Councillor Perry.
So through you, Mr. Chair, to Councillor Thompson and everybody else around the table, a lot of those questions were asked at our most recent EDAC committee meeting. I can provide answers, but I know that I believe Mr. Irello is still in the building. So it might make sense to call a short 5-minute recess to go get him, to bring him. He left? He's, oh, okay. Well then, to that point, the question was asked around liability and insurance for the people who are taking part, and that is a requirement of the space that they're operating. A lot of them for the liquor licenses that they need to take out if they're going to be serving alcohol. If they're using the space as patio space, it was my impression and my understanding that they will require insurance, and I think that's a completely practical and relevant thing that needs to be figured out. So it might make sense because I know that there are different staff members working on different parts of this program. If Mr. CAO, if you can keep those questions that aren't 100% able to be answered here tonight, make sure that the appropriate staff are here at the council meeting so that we can have answers to questions that are important.
Councillor Tom.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I appreciate the concerns raised by Councillor Thompson. I think that it is important to make sure that those concerns are addressed, as Councillor Peary mentioned. I also agree, I'm of two minds, because I think this is, as a pilot project, and I appreciate the mayor bringing this forward, this is something that's interested me because it is done in other communities. Markham, I believe, Main Street is Highway 48. They don't have this, but they do go to one lane. It is a one-lane street through there. So in terms of the traffic concerns that may arise, although I think it's important to track those in other communities with similar thoroughfares, with similar traffic, they do accommodate one lane of traffic fine. Now, I'm not saying this would be the same, but that's why you do a pilot project to test these things. However, I do think that the concerns raised by Councillor Thompson have considerable merit. And so one of the things that struck me about this was it seems as if there's a little bit of a rush to get things moving. I understand that there's a June, July, August summer period of Canadian summer. But certainly as a pilot project, you'd be able to test the market, and certainly if it did start later, to address the concerns that Councillor Thompson brought up, you'd still get an effective sample of the area with July, August, September, as opposed to June, July, August or something. So, and it would still provide valid information for the town, because all we're looking for is how does the traffic react, how do the residents react, because a lot of times no one watches council meetings, and we could communicate to death with them, and they probably only realize it's going on when there's a bump out on Yonge Street and they notice a difference in traffic. So for me, if we can address those concerns before we move forward, so we understand that from the permitting perspective, leasing perspective, and even though Councillor Perry addressed the insurance, then we can move forward with a pilot project this year, whether it's for 3 months, 2 months, 1 month, to really just test whether this concept is viable for Yonge Street. And I think that makes sense to me. I mean, I'm happy to move at a more cautious pace, so long as we just don't hold it up unnecessarily. But that we do institute some form of pilot project to feel out the community as to whether or not this is something we can move forward with on a permanent basis, and we can make the decision at that time, because we might decide that it's not a right fit for Yonge Street. But I don't want to make that decision until we have evidence that came out of a pilot project, which I think would give us the best evidence of that. So I'm not sure if I'm going to make any amendments at this time, but I would echo some of the concerns Councillor Thompson made, while strenuously saying that we should move forward with this, albeit if it is at a later time this year.
Councillor Humphries?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I'm not going to be repetitive, but Councillor Tom actually covered a lot of my questions. I'm actually looking forward to seeing what the pilot project displays once and for all. We keep talking about revitalization and bringing people back to the core, and we keep saying all this stuff, and nothing's really been done. We have some great ideas out there, but nothing has been done. So I'm looking forward to this. We can actually see it. It may cause chaos. It may not. May cause some great business, economic development in our downtown, and we can just build on it. I have seen this type of thing in other communities, and Barrie's one of them. And it's pretty cool when you go through there, and you're in no hurry to go through. I mean, people know when you go downtown at, in that intersection, you better not be in a hurry at any time of day. So if you want to get in a hurry, you go around the other bypasses or around it. So for me, this is a good idea. I'm looking forward to understanding some of the concerns Councillor Thompson brought forward and what the businesses need to do to prepare. And hopefully we'll get a good amount of participation and a pilot project that can really demonstrate, is this something we do want to really move forward in? And if we do, and if you've ever been to Barrie downtown, they've got, these things look beautiful in the summer. Like the vegetation around, the flowers, the people, it's just one kind of connecting pathway for people to go through as you walk through while people are enjoying whatever they're enjoying at the businesses. So I think it's good. Thanks for bringing it forward.
Mayor Daw, then Councillor Marcus.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Again, I just want to stress that what we're looking at is a pilot, and a lot of the questions that are asked are entirely valid, and ideally the pilot would do that. And maybe we don't spend a lot of money on a pilot. Maybe we implement something that's a little more scaled back. But I think what we do need to do is step up to the fact that we keep talking about we want to revitalize the downtown. Let's try this. If it doesn't work, nothing ventured, nothing gained. Let's try something else. But we have to do something. So I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Councillor Marcus.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I mean, the last time this was in front of us, I had some concerns. I still have those same concerns. I asked, for a report or something to come back from emergency services. I still don't see that. I don't see what the thoughts are from emergency services. While York Region, it's a little bit more in depth. To me, it sounds like they're okay with the pilot going forward, but in the end, they're going to make a decision, and probably their decision and thoughts are totally different from having, in my point of view, chicanes on a main arterial road. And then, and I'm looking at $200,000, and we keep hearing it's a pilot project. Sure, it's a pilot project. I guess through you to Mr. Simonovskis, what do we do with these if we decide not to go forward? We've built them. What happens to them? We spent $200,000. What happens?
Mr. Simonovskis?
Through you, Mr. Chair, if council, so we wouldn't build anything until we have direction from council to proceed with this project. They are designed to be assembled and disassembled in modules, so once they're constructed, come the fall, staff would dismantle them and store them away, and they'd be reused until either they fail or council chooses a different direction for Yonge Street.
So I guess if the pilot fails, we really don't have a use for them afterwards. Is that correct?
Mr. Simonovskis?
Well, I'm sure there's some salvage value, but it wouldn't be as intended for what we're planning on Yonge Street.
Okay, thank you. And then, in just reading through the report, I do have some concerns with this report, and I did bring it up with our CAO. As far as, under the comments, it speaks to the open house, and the majority of the residents who attended the open house meeting were in favor of the implementation of the pilot project. I was there for the whole time, and quite frankly, I don't agree with that statement at all. And when you read through the email responses and the comments that were there, I mean, like, I'll just, just what aspect of this harebrained project am I not understanding? I mean, I can just go through almost, I'd say 90% of them are I think there was only 3 that I went through. I mean, I can sit here and go through them, but like, I think that's, to say that the majority of them were in favor, I think that's wrong. And on top of that, I mean, I took it upon myself. I did a little survey on my own. I had 100 responses, and 81% were absolutely not in favor of this. So I don't see how we can, staff can say that the majority of the people that came to that open house were in favor. I think that statement is absolutely false. And once again, like I mentioned the last time this was in front of us, I think we're doing this piecemeal, and we just saw this with the last thing, with the parking. We're looking at this one area, we're going to do this without a proper bypass. Traffic's going to go somewhere. It's going to infiltrate into those streets. What are we going to do then? Then we're going to be back here and we're going to be looking at different ways of how do we move that traffic now from getting into the streets. We haven't even thought of that. And I know, let's do the pilot, we can look at it. But then I look at the left turn restriction, which was put forward at the same time as this. And yet York Region is doing an extensive study to put up 2 signs that say restrict left turns during peak hours. But yet on this one, they're not doing that extensive study ahead of time. They're saying, go ahead and do it, and we'll look at it afterwards. So I don't get that. I don't understand why you wouldn't do that study first. They're looking at the infiltration into the side streets, on the left turn restrictions. They're looking at all aspects of it before they even allow a motion that council approved unanimously to move forward with the pilot project. And here we have something that it seems that we can't agree on, yet the region's not looking into it in that depth. So I have concerns with that. So, quite frankly, I won't be able to support this tonight.
Councillor Tom for a second time.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. I just want to bring a point of clarification now with respect to Councillor Marax's comments. I think the reason why the region hasn't done this extensive research of their own is that the town owns Yonge Street. So the intersection is owned by the region, and therefore they would do all the research there, but certainly they're not going to endeavor to take research on a stretch of road that we in fact own. So that's all I wanted to just clarify that point.
Sure, Councillor Marcus.
Well, I would just say that they're looking at infiltration into streets that we own. So therefore, if they're looking into the streets that we own, then they can look at it for this one too. I think maybe there's some lobbying going on.
Councillor Gardner, did you have any comments?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I love this idea in theory, and I find it a little bit scary in fact. I've spoken to a lot of people, or rather a lot of people have spoken to me, and the idea is wonderful, thanks to the mayor, but we already have a problem on this strip. It's going to cause more of a problem. Perhaps if it was just for July and August, maybe it would be an interesting experiment, but certainly not June and certainly not September. The other problem is the timing, because right now we've closed off Mary Street, and when I come from the south end of town and I come up to, for example, the leisure complex, I take Yonge Street now because I don't want to cut through the neighborhoods. And I really can't see it if this goes through. The other thing that really concerns me is the region's response. We know that this is a transit corridor, and we know that the region wants to do these dedicated bus lanes, and at some point they're going to get around to doing it. So the way I read this is well, go ahead and try this out if you like, but remember, we have a different idea for Yonge Street. So to me, one of the worst things would be if we do this for a few months and the residents really like it, and then the region comes to us, which they will at some point, and say, you can't get it down to one lane because we need it. We need that second lane for transit. And to me, that takes priority. So I thank the mayor for bringing it forward. I cannot see how it could all be workable for the town of Aurora. Oh, and by the way, with respect to what Councillor Maraca said, and I know Mr. Simonovskis knows this, but I have sat on this council for more years than I can remember. It's come out of various committees. We need to educate the public that we do have a bypass, certainly in the south end of town, and it's time we signed it properly and we communicated it properly. And I've given up asking, but I will ask you again through you, Mr. Mayor, to Mr. Simonovskis. It's a valuable bypass. Let's get people to use it and take traffic off Yonge Street in general.
Okay. Well, I mean, my thoughts are, I've heard a lot of recommendations put forward in the town, whether they put up a McDonald's and, people complaining about potential seagulls, garbage thrown about, and we haven't seen that. It's been very clean, and I haven't smelled anything. Maybe that's not a good thing then. But a lot of the things that, at first blush, we think that it's not going to work, and I've learned from my experience that sometimes what's something that's obviously maybe that you think is not going to work, it actually turns out to be a success. And sometimes if you're used to a beige wall all your years, it's hard to get used to painting it red or green. And then when you paint it red or green, you're surprised that you actually like it. And so I know prior times this came to council or committee. Excuse me. I was not forward for various reasons, and as I heard, as I read the report and heard the mayor, I was being more won over, and especially considering that we have the cultural precinct being planned, and we certainly want that to be a pedestrian type of environment, and Yonge Street is part of that. And so it melds well with that concept. And at the same time, I know that there's still a few questions still yet to be answered, and some of those will be answered hopefully by council meeting next week. But one of my other major concerns is, as another member already mentioned, is the traffic. We haven't dealt with the traffic at Yonge and Wellington. And who knows, I know that this is just a pilot, and the issues that come up will be gone in 4 months or 5 months. But I still do have concerns over, we just spent an hour dealing with the town park parking and the GO train, and my fear is the traffic diversion through these neighborhoods, and we're trying to solve one problem, and we might have enhanced it for another 4 or 5 months. I think in terms of the timing and just some of the questions that we still have unanswered, I can't support it at this time, but I think I am open to the idea for having this at a later date, once all those questions have been answered, whether it be next year or the following. I am open to that, but I just don't want to put local residents through more stress with regards to traffic and parking, given that we're already dealing with those issues now. Do we have any more comments for second round? Councillor Marcus and Councillor Abel? Okay, sir. Councillor Abel?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It's always interesting. I'm noticing a theme pilot coming up tonight, and then reasons why we won't go ahead with it. You know, everyone's in favor. We've got a community improvement plan. We did a cultural precinct. We talk about revitalization. As I said, we're desperate in anything. We're very hungry for revitalization. I like the idea of taking initiatives, especially if they're bold. So I'm open to anything, as I've seen in other municipalities. Barrie's been mentioned. They did a great job in their Main Street. I've been to Charlottetown. They do it there. And I know Georgetown had the same problem. They spoke at the AMO in 2012 and how they revitalized their Main Street, which was Highway 7. And very similar ideas. The cost of $200,000 at $20,000 a patio, and this is what always concerns me. If we give money, it'll be spent. That is just crazy. I have no renderings, and I don't know, through you, Mr. Chair, are we approving spending $200,000 with this notice of motion? Or is something going to come back before?
Mr. Mayor, or Mr. Simonauskas?
Through you, Mr. Chair, the $200,000 is for the decking, railing, planters, and plants. So there's a fair bit of infrastructure. It is going out to competitive bid, so we're looking for open bids on this. It's not something we're expecting to sole source. The fourth recommendation is that the award be that I be authorized to award the contract to accelerate the process. If there's a concern with regards to award of this contract and there's a desire for council to review the tender before it's awarded, then I would expect that we would not be able to implement this year because of timing. So that's why that fourth recommendation is in there.
And you know, and so that's a concern of mine. I've already seen, and I don't want to go into details, but I've seen already where we've rushed and spent money, and I have a concern about doing that again. I'd like a little clarity on it. I find $20,000 at a patio is quite expensive. I don't know. I'm not into construction. Well, I mean, I would. So I just sort of I know that we're trying to move this through for this summer, and here it is. This report is right before the last cycle in May, and now we're being told you got to put this money forward, and we're going to accelerate. Now we're going to accelerate. I've got a concern with that. That's not why, you know, and we've had the same proposals brought forward with the same mandate. We have an aggressive timeline was another. So some reports, like mine, take 2.5 years, and some come flying through with big expenditures. So I would like to see a little consistency. Why do big ticket items come before council at last minute and we have to make a decision, and I haven't got the scope? Normally we have some renderings, some ideas. I wish this had been before us in March, so that I wouldn't have this, and we did have time for the RFP review and get an idea of their renderings going forward. So I am concerned.
Was it Councillor Thompson or Marcus?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Two questions. Mr. Sinoski, you just touched on a few things as far as the bid and everything. I'm just curious because I'm not sure if it was mentioned at EDAC. I did hear that it possibly was. I might be wrong, but I'll just ask: has it already gone out for an RFP? Has the RFP already gone out?
Through Mr. Chair, no.
No? Okay, thank you. And, you know, I heard about Highway 48, and actually, I've talked many times with Councillor Ray, which is the Ward 4 councillor in Markham, which Highway 48 right there falls on, and, you know, and I discussed this with her and just said that what we were thinking of doing and implementing, and she said, Highway 48 there in Markham, it's a mess, and the residents and even herself would wish that they could somehow turn it around and take it back. So, you know, hearing that, it puts a little concern for me. So it's not all great on Highway 48. So I just thought I'd throw that out there.
Councillor Gardner?
Thank you. I have one last concern, and it is on page 5, posting the tender documents for 1 week prior to closing. We have a process, we have a policy in place. It's there for good reason. Have we ever, through you, Mr. Chair, to Mr. Simnovskis, I don't ever remember anything like this, putting this into rapid motion?
Mr. Simnovskis?
Through you, Mr. Chair, we have done short tender, shorter periods. However, and I apologize with regards to that 1 week period, subsequent to the submission of this project, we did decide internally that we were going to do it for a 2 week period. So the actual extension, the actual tender period will be 2 weeks. So we were looking at opportunities to reduce that time frame, but we are going to have a 2 week period.
Follow up, and through you, Mr. Chair, that's the usual period, 2 weeks?
Correct.
Thank you. I'm glad to hear that.
Okay, if there's no other comments, I'd like to put this to a vote. All those in favor? All those opposed? Okay, that's defeated. Okay, the next item is number 3, pulled by Councillor Gardner.
Mr. Chair, if I may ask to Mr. Nader-Rosny, we've got a lot of items on this agenda, and we also have a closed session. So I'd like to know which of these might be time sensitive. I don't think number 3 is.
Mr. Zio?
Through you, Mr. Chair. I defer to staff, but I believe the ones you would be concentrating on would be the tenders, since those would involve moving procurements and projects forward. Speed cushion we've handled. The same would be true for the Stuart Burnett Park, which would be needed for, oh, look at that, here comes another list.
This one's especially important, but the circled ones, yes.
Yeah, I've got 5 and 4. Yep, I got them. 4, 5, 11, 12, 13, 14, and 16 and 17, which are planning items.
That's a lot of items. So
16, 17.
Yep.
maybe we could, the number 3 could be deferred to the next GC.
Sure.
I'll make a motion to defer number 3 to the next GC.
All those in favor? A second? Okay, Councillor Marakis. All in favor? Sorry? Sure. Councillor Perry?
If the item is not important to the councillor, I don't know why, you know, we pull so many items and then they're not important, we don't talk to them.
Point of privilege, Mr. Chair. All of the items that I pull are important to me. I am talking about time sensitivity. It is 20 to 10, and we have 20 items on this agenda, and we are at number 3, and we have a closed session. So I do not like any implication that says I am pulling items that I don't believe are important.
Can we suggest that instead of, okay. Well, I ruled in favor of Councillor Gardner. Can you Did you want to rephrase the question, Councillor Perry, or comment?
Certainly. It's always been my position that, you know, if you have a few questions that staff can answer, it makes lots of sense to have staff answer those questions so that you can come to the meetings prepared.
And if I could respond to that, Mr. Chair, I always come prepared. I always come prepared, and I have done for the last 12 years, and the residents know that. I believe there are some questions that must be asked at the table. And if I believe they must be asked at the table, there must be residents that will agree with me. Thank you, Councillor Perry.
Can we suggest, seeing that there are many items that we're going to have to, or likely defer, that we just maybe put a vote on the 6 planning items, and we agree on that, and we'll go forward with those. Okay. Councillor Thompson seconds that. All 4? It will be items 11, 12, 13, 14, 16, and 17. Okay, 16, so we'll go 16 first. So those items are 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, and we'll do 16 first. Is that okay? I'll put that. Yeah, we're dealing with 16. So, okay, and 17. Okay, we'll do 16 and 17. All those in favor of those items?
Hold on, you have a motion on the table to defer the other one?
No, but I asked them to.
So did they amend that? I'm sorry, I didn't get that.
So the motion to amend, to move or defer item 3 by Councillor Gardner. Councillor Gardner, are you okay with pulling that, and we'll...
I'm okay with whatever you decide.
Okay.
I'm okay doing whatever you decide is important to forward the process of this council tonight.
That are important, and then if we don't get
Yeah.
all of them, we can defer at that
Yep.
point.
Yep. Okay, so we're going to move forward with the items that Mr. CEO has indicated, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, and we will start with 16 and 17.
Motion to move 16 and 17 forward so we can deal with it now.
Yeah. Okay, Councillor Humphrey seconds. All in favor? Opposed? Okay. 16. Okay, so we'll deal with item 16.
Thank you, Mr.
And
Chair.
that's
It's mine.
Councillor Gardner.
It's mine, and I did try and
Sorry,
get clarification on this.
Are you going to move it and
I move
second
it as is.
And Councillor Thompson seconds.
I did try and get clarification on this, and Mr. Marino was very helpful, but it didn't quite answer my question, so I'll try again. It's on page 3, it's the chart. I understand there are certain requirements in this business park zone for landscape coverage. I just don't understand what this particular part of the chart means. So it's it's the 8th one down. So under existing zoning bylaw, it has its dimension requirements, and under proposed development, it's percentage. And Mr. Romano did explain to me that he's talking about the whole of the planning area, but I would like to have that apples to apples. So if you could try and do that.
Mr. Rubino?
Certainly. Through you, Mr. Chair. So chart 3, Councillor Gardner is referring to the parking requirements.
No, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry.
Landscaping
Landscape coverage. So our current existing bylaw for the business park zone identifies, we haven't spelled it out in detail, but it refers to dimension requirements as per section 27D43, not a percentage. So if you refer to that section of our current bylaw, it states that landscaping requirements for business park areas require a minimum of 3-meter landscape strip adjacent to the local road to front yard. The application before us, figure 6, the proposed landscape plan, they are meeting that minimum requirement of a 3-meter landscape strip along the Eric T. Smith frontage, of course, except where there are driveway locations. What we've identified in that second column under proposed development, we've identified, based on the information we have, that there's a total of 18% of the site area will have some type of landscaping on the site, essentially around the entire perimeter. So they are meeting that minimum 3-meter landscape strip, but they're actually providing more, because along the entire perimeter, they are providing landscaping.
Thank you. So then the comment would be under, I could rephrase that 18% to say that under proposed development, the applicant is meeting or exceeding the requirements?
Mr. Rumino?
Through you, Mr. Chair, that's correct. That'd be a
Thank
fair
you.
statement.
I'm just trying to get apples to apples so I can understand it. Thank you.
Councillor Abel?
Thank you. It's great that we have this before us, but I just want to be sure that, could you give me an idea? We have in our OP number of employees per acre, and could you give me some background on how many employees, and do we match that objective? I think it's 50 positions per acre.
Mr. Ramuno?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I think, Councillor, yeah, you're referring to which is the growth plan figure of 50 people and jobs per hectare. That applies to a greenfield area. That wouldn't apply in this instance, but we do have, and the region has general density, minimum density requirements or objectives for employment areas, and it's typically around minimum of 20 jobs per hectare. And there are different rates for different type of employment, whether it's industrial type uses, employment warehousing has a certain rate, commercial a different rate, and office another rate. But within this business park, based on the warehousing, the different type of employment uses, the employment forecasts that we are seeing are in keeping with those minimums, and will help us achieve the number of employment jobs we'll need over the long term.
So, Mr. Chair, through you, you don't have a number?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I mean, this is an existing business in Newmarket that is relocating here. I don't have offhand the number of jobs that they will be providing, in this location, and I don't have a number I can provide that number to council with respect to the number of jobs that we currently have within this business park area. I just don't have that at my fingertips.
Thank you. I was just curious, that's all. Again, I would like to welcome anyone that comes to our town to open a business, and especially if they're from Newmarket.
Any other comments? Councillor Garner?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And in case I implied anything different, I also am very glad to have a new business in town, especially one from Newmarket, and also where you've exceeded our landscape requirements. So thank you very much. Just one more question on urban design, page 4. It says, although the subject lands are not technically within the Hallgrove Business Park subdivision in order to create business park, it's my understanding that business park guidelines are of a certain standard for the town. So if something's in a business park, it's generally going to have a very high level of urban design because we've required it. Through you, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Rumino?
Through you, Mr. Chair, yes, that's correct. So we do have the Hallgrove Business Park Design Guidelines that were prepared for the Don Hillock first phase of that business park, and we do apply those within this area when we do receive applications.
There are no other comments. I'll put the vote on the floor. All those in favor? Not in favor? Motion passes. Oh, sorry, I didn't see it. Okay.
No, I wasn't paying attention.
Okay.
The mayor asked me to put my hand up high.
Okay, that item passes. Okay, we'll move on to item 17, and that was also pulled by Councillor Gardner. Should put that on the floor, please.
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Second, Councillor Perry. Councillor Gardner.
I think it's always nice to say something positive at this table that everybody can agree with. And I would just like to congratulate these, Ms. Kay and Ms. and Mr. Gong. They are taking a heritage property, a designated heritage property, and are really doing a fantastic job with it, keeping within all of the guidelines. And Horton House is an important house in Aurora, and they are protecting it. They've taken it on. So thanks very much. And also a great report, Mr. Munro and Mr. Healy. Just a really good report. Thank you.
Any other comments? With that to a vote, all in favor? Opposed? Okay, that passes. That brings us to item 11, Councillor Gardner.
Thank you. Move as is.
Second, Councillor Perry.
Through you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Downey, it's unclear to me, and I actually had a call from a resident with respect to treating the emerald ash borers. The question from the resident is that on the top of page 2, the very first section under comments, it says that the entire ash tree inventory has been treated twice. And I thought, as they thought, that that was the required number of treatments for each tree. And yet we want to extend the contract for another year. If you could clarify that.
Mr. Downey?
Through you, Mr. Chair. Unfortunately, with some of the studies that have indicated the effectiveness of chemical treatment of the trees, they moved the goalpost a little bit on us, and we are looking at some additional treatments in order to ensure that we have effective treatment on the trees. So it was originally thought when we introduced this program and all the information told us that we would be limited to a certain number of applications, but studies have shown that the effectiveness increases if we increase the amount of treatments.
Councillor Gardner?
So just to say it in my own words, so with the information that we had at the time, and with the budget that we approved at the time, we actually didn't have complete information considering the reality of how this chemical works, and we need to go for one more treatment of all these trees.
Mr. Downey?
Through you, Mr. Chair, no, we did have accurate information. It was the information that was provided to us.
I know that.
And so it was up to date. It was correct information as provided to us, and of course provided to council. We have also, as you know, looked at alternative treatments. We came forward to council and moved from the original chemical that we were using to what we feel is a more effective chemical in treating the emerald ash borer, and a more cost-effective chemical as well. So we believe now with the budget we can treat more trees more often and more effectively, which is the reason that we went from treason to Imajet.
Thank you, and I wasn't saying we didn't, I wasn't faulting the information that was given to council. Some may remember that we got a lot of emails, or at least I got a lot of emails about using this particular chemical that we chose to use because of its potential effect on the honeybees. So I'm just want to clarify, we're going to be treating these trees one more time with this chemical that doesn't seem to be an issue with our use.
Mr. Downey?
Through you, Mr. Chair, yes, we are going to continue to treat the trees with Imajet. And so that is the neonicotinoid that there was some concern with regards to that effect it may have on honeybees. However, there is no evidence on either side that that is actually the case. Certainly when sprayed on plants, neonicotinoids are hazardous to insects. However, we are injecting this into the tree itself. It doesn't become airborne. It doesn't. It is carried through the tree and affects the larvae and the insect itself. And yes, we are going to be treating it, continuing to treat the trees with Imajet, and we have to do it one more time.
Thank you. That's the part I was looking for. This will hopefully be the last time. Thank you.
Councillor Thompson, then Doe.
Thank you, Councillor Kim, Mr. Chair. My questions are, I'll be brief because we're moving along here. Page 66 of the report, it talks about how the treatment that we've used that you're asking to renew. It says that majority of treated ash trees have responded favorably. However, staff are saying some ash trees that have either not responded favorably or were not suitable candidates for treatment. So my question is, basically, we're given an economic argument on page 69 about the cost of doing nothing versus the cost of using chemicals to treat the problem, but it doesn't really indicate the percentages of trees that were treated versus the percentage of trees that didn't respond or were not capable. At least unless I missed it somewhere in the report. I think that would have been necessary because if there's 2,300 emerald ash tree or ash trees in town and 30% of them didn't respond, then we're still going to be dealing with the removal of those trees, and we're still going to be spending a considerable amount of money on top of the amount of money that we're going to be spending in terms of the $140,000. And I understand from an economic standpoint, it might make sense to pump the trees full of chemicals to stop it, even if it's not harmful to the honeybee. And I know I proved it when it was at council before. But I'm starting to realize or think about, is the economics really the only reason we're doing this? Because if it's, I don't know. It just seems like we're injecting chemical into nature to stop something that is a natural evolutionary process. And the argument that's most compelling is that it's going to cost us less if we keep doing it, as opposed to whether or not it's correct for the environment. So perhaps that's a comment, and my question would be with respect to what I mentioned about the percentages of trees that are uptaking and not uptaking the treatment. Through you to Mr. Downey.
Mr. Downey?
Through you, Mr. Chair, with regards to how we initiated this program, yes, it was based, if you go back to previous reports, we initially presented this to council on an economic basis. What the cost effect would be if we didn't treat the trees, what the cost effect it would be if we only treat a certain number of trees, and what trees would be excluded. It was understood at the commencement of this that because this was something new and it was fairly aggressive, that we needed to take some type of stand fairly soon and start treating trees, because once they're infected, chemicals don't work. So the chemicals must be injected into a tree that is already healthy. So some of the trees that we already saw in a declining position were not going to be treated, and so they are seen as trees that are not seeing any improvement, because we're not treating them. If the question is, if we treated a tree, what percentage of those are still surviving? I can give you those numbers. That's not a problem. And they're very high. But, it's not 100%, but it's fairly high. And I can provide that information to you for next week. So if that helps with that clarification, I'm happy to give that to you. But we didn't treat every ash tree in town. We knew that was not going to be possible.
Thank you, Mr. Downey, and that would be great for next week if you could provide that information. Like I said, my comment is just, I'm not sure if injecting chemicals into trees, I haven't thought about this considerably since the last time it came across our table. Simply for economics, maybe it's something we should be looking at, but at least take the information for next week and make a decision then. Thank you.
Councillor Thompson?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just quickly, through you to Mr. Downey. Mr. Downey, you know, as it states in the report, you know, we've been dealing with this since 2012, since you first brought it to Council's attention. And if possible, in terms of that additional information, it would be helpful for me and maybe others of Council to get a total cost of how much we've spent in the pursuit of preserving these trees over, you know, those 3-4 years that we've now been engaged in this process. We often see these reports, but we typically see them on an annual basis. You know, this is what we're doing in 2016 or 2015. And just as an overall sense, just like we're talking about, you know, the success we've had with trees over the life cycle of this project, it'd be nice every once in a while in the reports to show, you know, I guess, not a year to date, but essentially a total to date of how much we've invested in saving these trees since this project was initiated. That's just a comment.
Mayor Dahl?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And through you to Mr. Downey. Mr. Downey, just before a council meeting, you gave me a copy of a paper from University of Minnesota, Michigan State, and Ohio State with respect to neonicotinoids in the use of the emerald ash borer. And I think it might be beneficial. I found it quite interesting if you could distribute that to the rest of council, because we have, I think, pretty much all received some communications from some residents who are concerned with neonicotinoids, and I found it very helpful. It pretty clearly explains the difference between spray, soil, and injection. Councillor Tom's point's well taken. Using insecticides at any time is a tricky thing. This seems to be one of the safer methods of doing it. I think you'd also mentioned you had a YouTube video. So if you could perhaps distribute the link for that as well. And I don't know if Mr. Downey has any comments, Mr. Chair, on that.
Mr. Downey?
Through you, Mr. Chair, yes, the study that we provided to you was the study that we used when presenting our case to council from changing from Trizen to Imajet. And the video is actually just something that we discovered today, and it was forwarded to me by Mr. Tree. It's an hour and 5 minutes long, but it carries you through step by step exactly what the effects are on primarily the honeybee population with regards to the use of neonicotinoids in dealing with the emerald ash borer. I can tell you from the video that the results are not conclusive. They indicate that there is no definitive answer. However, they do feel that there certainly is, if not no impact, a very low impact with regards to the honeybees, with regards to the honeybee population. But I'm more than happy to provide that YouTube link to all members of council.
Councillor Maracus.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just got a couple questions quickly. It talks about on page 3 about the ash trees and the wood lots and how many come down. I'm just curious because I know a lot of residents off of Willow Farm with the trail behind there. Is that what happened with a bit of a clear cutting, so to say, in that trail system there? Through you to Mr. Downey.
Mr. Downey.
Through you, Mr. Chair. Yes, the original treatment was only for street trees. Open spaces, woodlots, and parkland were not included. We have expanded the program into some park areas, but our open spaces remain untreated, and we are going to lose all the ash trees in those areas.
And, through you to Mr. Downey, is there a special disposal procedure for any of the treated dead chemical trees?
Mr. Downey.
Through you, Mr. Chair, we can't transport the wood, so you can't use it for firewood or transport it elsewhere. So we generally take it to our yard at Machel and chip it, and then use it on our trail system.
Councilor Marcus.
I'm just curious, because, you know, we've always heard that the chemicals, there's no issues with it because it's on the inside. And I'm just wondering if we chip it, would there be some issues with that? Because now it's in the open. And I'm just curious, maybe we can look into that.
These are untreated trees that we're chipping.
They're untreated.
Correct, that's why they're dead.
Well, through you, I'm curious to what we do with the treated ones that are dead. What do we do with those?
I can certainly ask Mr. Tree. I'm not totally aware of what exactly they do, but I can ask Mr. Tree and I can provide that information to you.
Thank you, because I think that's a very important thing to look at. And then I guess just my last thing, I'm just curious, did this ever go to the environmental committee to take a look at for any thoughts, hidden comments?
Mr. Downey?
Through you, Mr. Chair, not that I'm aware of. I don't believe that the original staff report was asked to go to the environmental committee. And I will have to ask if Mr. Tree ever made presentation with regards to this to that committee, but I'm not aware of a presentation.
Maybe if we can just get a presentation to them just for information, just to know their thoughts and so they can see what's going on, that would be useful, I think. Thank you.
Councillor Abel?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I know we don't have much time. And of course, the emerald ash borer is a devastating evasive. And we, last council, we brought forward a program to combat the devastation. We were told it was going to cost us something like $7 million to remove and replace these trees. And so we came up with a program that could take the healthiest to the canopy that they value, the old ones and the young ones we would take down and repair, and we would save money there, and we would enhance our environment as well. We instituted a tree nursery program so that we weren't paying $450 a tree. It was something like $50 a tree. So put all this together, the saving environmentally to the canopy and energy and to the town to repair and replace was substantial, and I'm pleased to see the program is going. Of course, we're using a controversial insecticide that I liken to radiation. I mean, radiation is a bad word. Certainly, if there was a nuclear meltdown, the impact would be significant. But however, it is used in medicine, and when properly applied, does do wonders in a fight against devastating disease. So it's about the application is very important, and I think that's what we have stressed. There is perhaps a residual, but it's not what is impacting the bees as a whole in the population. I think that cars that hit bees on the highway would probably number more than the ones that are affected by so we're not banning the cars either. So I just want to kind of put everything in sort of perspective. Yes, alone, when you hear this and the bees, it is alarming. But spraying on plants, that's what has happened. It didn't happen with us applying that. It already had happened, the devastation to the bees. And this is being monitored at a very high level consistently. So there is a bit of trade-off. If there is a very small residual on the bees, it can be noted. But as I say, the overall program is working to our advantage. And we were one of the first municipalities to take that bold move, and I'm very pleased and proud of our council for doing so last term. I am very alarmed at insecticides that have an impact, but if the application is scientifically monitored and applied, I can see how that works too. We see that in medicine. So those are sort of my comments. And if Mr. Downey is coming back with a report on this, I hope he takes into the account the value of mature trees and how long it takes to create a tree when we consider, well, just replace them all. I mean, the impact on our boulevards would be substantial to the homes and the lifestyle. So picking good, healthy trees that fitted application, and then also creating a nursery so that we can put healthy trees grown in our soils with a minimal transfer is key to combating. And so I hope that's sort of included in the impact coming forward that Mr. Downey said he would bring.
Councillor Humphreys.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Many of my questions have been answered, and I look forward to the information we could share with some of the residents in terms of what the treatment is and how safe it is as the way we apply it. Just a quick question, though, through you to Mr. Downey. Is there any, we've talked about this way back when, any news on any kind of grants for our town, federal, provincial? I know we talked about it, but anything out there?
Mr. Downey?
To you, Mr. Chair, not that I'm aware of, we've been looking, but no one seems to want to help finance this.
Thanks.
There are no further comments. Put that to a vote. All in favor? Opposed? Okay, that carries, Madam Clerk. That brings us to item 12. That was also pulled by Councillor Gardner.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll move as is for discussion.
Okay, a second. Councillor Peary.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I can't gather from the report, so I'd like to ask through you to Mr. Downey. Mr. Downey, at the open house, there were many suggestions that were made. In particular, there were some about access. I'm looking at page 7. So it's attachment to page 7. I can't tell from the drawing. Wheelchair access at the central steps off John West Way is desired. Has that been included in the park? I guess because there are steps there.
Through you, Mr. Chair, the steps off John West Way are actually in the central part. There are access points at the corners that come to grade.
Thank you. So we don't need that.
No.
Thank you. Accessible parking from the side and end. Quantity of spaces to be determined. I don't see any handicap spots marked.
Mr. Downey?
Through you, that would have to be something that we would certainly bring forward as a recommendation, I guess, to IES, who are responsible for parking within the municipality and identifying certain spaces or a number of spaces for handicap.
Thank you. I mean, for the public's information, it'd be nice if they could be marked on the plan. There was an ask for a fence. It's a fence barrier is desired that could be used as a play element, and the concern was that it was right along John West Way that was so busy. I'm all the way at the bottom of page 7. It seems to me like a good ask, some sort of a barrier so the kids wouldn't run out onto, I mean, kids run out when they're not supposed to be. Seems like it might be a good safety issue. Anyway, I'm not sure when we have these public open houses, I'm not sure if these comments are they considered? Are they put into the plan? If not, what is the value of the public open house? This could be answered next week, Mr. Downey. I didn't speak to you about this before. The other thing that I was interested in and was mentioned in the comments was shade. And I see from the plan that there's kind of an, well, I don't know. There's some things along the bottom of the page in this attachment 1, the big drawing that we got. I can't tell if these are things that are going to be in our park or not. Especially with respect to the shade structure. These shade structures are quite open. We really need some shade. Some real shade for the kids and the seniors who are using the area. And I also can't tell with the, it is our first accessible park. I can't tell from the drawing or from the report if all the different needs are going to be represented. And maybe that's a question to Mr. Simonovskis, but visual impairment, hearing, well, I don't have to go through the list, but I mean, it's not only people in wheelchairs that might want specific access, maybe just want to sit in the shade. I guess the biggest question, though, is I was on the Accessibility Advisory Committee when this first came to us. It was kind of a general design. And the committee, I remember asking for it to come back. So has it been vetted through the committee? Because this is a really important step for us to have our first accessible park. And it should be thoroughly vetted, in my opinion, through the Accessibility Advisory Committee. I don't know if Councillor Humphreys can speak to that. If it's, I don't believe it's been to the committee, but I don't know for sure.
Is that a question to?
Well, it's to Mr. Downey, and if Mr. Downey doesn't know, perhaps to, because that's not his committee, to Councillor Humphreys.
Actually, if you look on page 72, in comments, the second paragraph, in addition to our accessibility advisory staff and our accessibility advisory committee have both had an opportunity to make comments and review the proposed plan and are satisfied with the design.
To the best of my knowledge, this design has not gone back to the Accessibility Advisory Committee. So I don't know who would be able to tell me if it was on the agenda or not. But a committee member was speaking to me and said they hadn't seen it. So through you, Mr. Chair, perhaps to Councillor Humphreys.
Councillor Humphreys?
Through you, Mr. Chair. You know, thinking back on our last meetings, I just can't remember if the specific updated drawing came back to us. I do know that we've had some other parks come forward, and they learned from the initial information, some of these features were suggested for other parks. But I don't really remember this coming in my term on the committee, that this came to us. But I could be wrong, Mr. Downey, so I can go back and double check.
Well, if I could just ask, because this is GC, if we could find out for council whether this has gone back, this particular plan has gone back to the Accessibility Advisory Committee, and if it has or if it hasn't, what is on here that directly affects each group that might be challenged who would be using this? If we're going to have an accessible park, let's make sure it's accessible. Do I need to make that a motion about the information coming back for next week about it?
I think Mr. Downey can bring that back next week.
Through you, Mr. Chair, based on some of the questions that we're getting, I'm more than happy to have a presentation made, although we already have 3 next week, on this park design, so that council can actually see some of the details within the park design. They can go through them. They can make any comment they wish, if that gives council some comfort. We felt that this has gone through a fairly exhaustive process. However, if council still has some concerns that some issues aren't being addressed, or want some assurances that they are, we're more than happy to make a presentation and give council some of that assurances.
Councillor Gardner, would that be suitable for you?
That would help. Thank you very much, Mr. Downey. But, you know, we have a mandated by the province Accessibility Advisory Committee who are to advise council. This is our first accessible playground, maybe our only accessible municipal playground. It needs to go to that committee. It just doesn't have to come to council. Council needs to receive advice from the committee. It is actually mandated that is what their job is. So a presentation next week would be great, but if it hasn't been to the Accessibility Advisory Committee, I would like to ensure that it goes there. I would like, I mean, do I need to make it a motion? Mr. CEO, do I need to make it a motion that it goes to the Accessibility Advisory Committee?
Mr. CEO?
Through you, Mr. Chair, no, I would say not. The report says that it has, so if it turns out that it hasn't, then we'll have to bring it back to them.
It has gone, but it went in my term. That's a while ago, but if we could just find out, if it's been, and it's been recently, that's great.
Councillor Perry?
Councillor Gardner, it may well have only gone during your term. As you'll note in the background, the open house for this project was held in January 15th of 2014. That would have allowed a fair bit of time to take place between when the open house took place and when it could have gone, because there was roughly 11 months from the open house to the end of the last term of council. And now we're another 18 months away from that point, so it's nice to see that we're moving as quickly on this project as we are on all of our parks that we're building. Happy to see that. But I do want to remind everybody as well that this isn't an approval of the park in principle. This is an award of the tender. So the tender documents were submitted, right? People bid on the project, we're awarding it the project. So to go backwards now and say, well, is this the park we want when we've already sent out a tender? I don't think that's the appropriate thing to be doing, but I am fully in support of having another presentation made to council to let everybody know what's going on. But this park was approved. We're not approving the park now, we're approving the construction of the park. So through you to Mr. Downey, when was the park actually approved?
Mr. Downey?
I'm trying to remember when the capital budget was approved. That's where I'm going with this. Capital budget, I thought, was approved in 2013. And at that point, we then we could then go to the public with a capital project. So it's been ongoing for quite some period of time. As I said, it's gone through quite a consultative process with regards to that. And if I might, one additional item, and as I say, we can do the presentation, but on page 2 of the report, there's a statement that the final park design includes a number of features that aimed at the needs of all users in terms of both physical and sensory abilities, in that it includes elements and equipment geared towards the senses as well as physical challenges. So yes, both of those elements are in there. But as I said, we can actually illustrate those in the presentation.
And just to finish off my thoughts, this was something that I was always keen that if we were going to rename the park, it made sense to rename it and give the park some oomph and something to make it more than just a token gesture to rename the park. So I want to thank Mr. Downey for all the work he's done over the years to make sure that he's done his due diligence to make sure that we've got the best park possible at this location.
Thank you. Councillor Abel?
Thank you, and I'm along the same lines as Councillor Perry, having been involved in this. Went to the first public meeting. I went with the vice chair, who is now the chair, Tyler Barker, and the presentation from Mr. Melvin of PMA Landscape Architects was outstanding, where he talked about each and all the sensories and everything that Councillor Gardner has been inquiring about. And this is going to be an extraordinary park for the town of Aurora. It is above and beyond what we had with our only other one, and in that it takes in sensory for autism, for those with visual and hearing, as well as those with physical disabilities and those with cognitive challenges. So all of those things have been taken in effect and were, when it first was discussed in January 15th of 2014, and then once again summarized in May 2015, a year and a bit later. We did put it in the budget. We have tendered it. It has been vetted by the Accessibility Advisory Committee. And so I am very pleased and proud to be moving this forward. And I thank everyone for being involved and all those that participated.
Could we have a motion to extend? Councillor Perry, Councillor Tom. Councillor Tom? Oh, all those in favor? Sorry. Okay, I'll go. Councillor Gardner for the second time.
I'm going to be very brief, and I'm not sure what the word would be, but perhaps it would be irony. If we have presented a park design, a final draft park design for an accessible park that has not gone through the Accessibility Advisory Committee, that's disrespectful to the committee, and it's just plain wrong. I'm just trying to make sure that the process that should be followed was followed, and if it was, fantastic.
Okay, we'll put it to a vote. All those in favor? Opposed? Passes.
Mr. Chair, are we not able to move the remaining items to next week? As we've said many times, these are recommendations that need to be ratified next week anyways. We still have closed session tonight. I'm sure that's going to take some more time as well. We've been here since 6 o'clock. I think it's reasonable to conclude our business after 5 hours. Unless there's any objections. I mean, I realize there are some tenders, but they're not ratified till next week anyway, so my preference is just to move them forward and deal with them at council.
Can I have a second? Councillor Abel. All those in favor? Opposed? Okay, that passes. Okay. So move on to new business. To my left, Councillor Perry. No. Mayor Daw. Just Councillor Humphreys, nothing. Councillor Marcus.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to ask quickly about the GO parking lot at the highway off of Wellington. I'm just wondering maybe if we can ask Metrolinx if they would consider putting a payment station there, because I've heard many times that a lot of residents would actually like to go there and park there, but unfortunately they have to have the exact amount to get on because there's no actual payment, or they have to have the Presto card. So if they don't, it's tough for them to use that. So maybe we can throw it out there. Maybe staff can ask them if they could put a payment station there.
Ms. Van Loen, would that be your area?
To you, Mr. Chair, we'll figure out who that will be, and we will follow up.
Councillor Gardner, did you say you had new business?
No, thanks.
Okay, great. We're going to move on to closed session. Can I have a motion to, no?
No,
Do we have?
closed session item.
No, okay. Motion to adjourn. Councillor Thompson, Councillor Perry, all in favor? Opposed? That passes. Thank you.